Welcome, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Goodman, Director of Marketing and Development for the YMCA of Northwest Louisiana, and we're here at 318 Latino Studios for Shreveport-Bossier, my city, my community, my home. And I absolutely can't wait to have today's discussion. Our guest is Archer Frierson. Archer, thanks for being here.
Pleased to be invited. Glad to be here.
Well,
Thank you.
We're gonna have a great conversation, and we're going to cover all kind of things today, but I want to start here. And as I mentioned off camera, if I get anything wrong, please set me straight. But your family came to Louisiana from South Carolina. So let's start. Tell me some about that, if you could.
Okay. I'll be glad to let you know the little bit that I know about it. In roughly the 1840s, they were cotton farmers in South Carolina, in the southeastern portion of the state, in a little town called Monk's Corner, which is about 65 or 70 miles northwest inland from Charleston. And apparently they weren't doing very well. And they had heard about the rich alluvial soil in the Brazos River Valley in Texas. And so they picked up stakes and loaded everything onto wagons and corralled all their livestock and set out on wagons for the Brazos River Valley. And I don't know how long the journey took, but they stopped to winter in northwest Louisiana because all the creeks and rivers and bayous were full of water and they couldn't cross them in the wagons. And they were out around what is current now the little town of Frierson in DeSoto Parish, southwest of Shreveport. And they liked it and they stayed. And they began to farm cotton again. And back then, the hill land, which is full of pine trees now, was the farmland because there was no levee system. And so there was no farming going on in the Red River Valley in the bottomland, which was much richer, more alluvial soil because it was susceptible to being flooded every year. So they farmed in the hill land, red clay, but over time began to acquire property in South Caddo Parish, south of Shreveport. And in 1919, my great-grandfather and grandfather moved the family, all their employees and livestock, I guess, to what is now the little community of Gale. The Gale family preceded the Frierson family in owning that portion of land. And they had accumulated G-A-Y-L-E.
Okay.
They, for a few years, commuted on horseback from Frierson to Gale. Well, that got old because it was about a 10-mile ride on horseback. And so those were early starts and late finishes to the days. So they moved and built their homes at Gale, built a cotton gin, and started the Frierson Plantation. What we know now is Frierson Plantation. It was L.S. Frierson and Sons to begin with, and then it became G.A. Frierson and Sons, my grandfather and my father. And then we changed the name to Frierson Plantation 35 or 40 years ago, we thought.
And now, so for people listening going, Frierson Plantation, where is that exactly? So it's out south on Highway 1. Back in the day when I was a kid, pre-I-49, to get to South Louisiana, almost everyone, or maybe everyone, period, traveled on Highway 1 and would pass Frierson Plantation. So today, is that considered Caspian, or what?
There's a depot stop with the name Gale, G-A-Y-L-E, named for the family that preceded us in ownership of the land. And if you'll notice, if you go south on Highway 1, all the plantation headquarters are on the railroad. And that's because that was the means by which they shipped the cotton out to the textile mills. There were no 18-wheelers. And so all the plantation headquarters as you go south are on the railroad.
That's fascinating. And so tell me what happens at Frierson Plantation in 2025. So we think we changed the name to Frierson Plantation maybe 40, 50 years ago.
35 or 40, probably, something like that, just to be more inclusive. I have two nephews who are farming now. My younger brother, Chris, and his son, Christian, are farming a portion of the place. And then my nephew, John Frierson Jr., the son of my late brother, John, is farming a portion of the place. And they have separate operations, but they farm alongside one another.
And cotton still today, or other things, or something else altogether?
Well, the cost of production of cotton these days has just zoomed to a very high level, and the price has not kept up. And I think Chris and Christian are going to plant a little bit of cotton, but they, along with John, are going to plant primarily soybeans and some corn.
Okay.
Most everybody in the cotton business has had to diversify because of the cost of production and the low price.
And talk a little bit about your direct farming experience, because there was a point in your career, it's behind you now, but there was a point in your career where you were doing some farming as well.
I did. I farmed actively for 25 years, from 1974 to 1998. I made 25 crops. And at that point in time, my three younger brothers had joined my father and me in the business at Frierson Plantation. And there was our plantation was simply not large enough, acreage-wise, to support my parents and 4 growing families. And so another brother, Clarence Jr., known to us as Tanny, his nickname, and I dropped out that same year. And he began to manage our mineral interests, and I went into commercial real estate.
And so, just so everyone knows, so it's you, I'm not going to get the order right, but it's you, Chris, John, and Tanny are the 4 brothers.
Well, the pecking order chronologically is myself, John, Tanny, who is Clarence Jr., and Chris.
And during that 25-year period where you were part of the farming activities, what were you farming during that period?
Well, when I first began, it was all cotton. And then slowly we began to introduce a few soybeans in, and some corn. Most of the time that I farmed, though, it was predominantly cotton.
Okay.
So I consider myself a retired cotton farmer.
I agree. All right, I'm gonna shift gears with you a little bit. Your family and you, for lack of a better phrase, had a front row seat for the Haynesville Shale. So talk to me some about that experience, if you could.
Okay. I think the year was 2008 when Petrohawk came to us and leased our Haynesville Shale. We had leased, there's never been any, let me back up. There's never been any oil production on our place, but there's been gas production for a good number of years. And we were familiar with how to go about leasing our land for minerals, and there has been drilling on our place for, pretty much my adult lifetime.
I'm going to interrupt one sec, because you told me something on the phone before today's conversation that stuck with me. You said your family kind of had a philosophy in terms of land, or maybe land and land rights, or just land. Can you share that, just because that impacted me when I heard it?
Well, so far as I know, we've never sold an acre of land. We're buyers of land, but not sellers of land. And I don't remember anybody informing me that was our family's philosophy, but it was just the way I grew up. And I always considered my job as being a good steward of land when it was my turn. And I've heard my father use that term as well, that we've always felt like land was an asset that if you managed it and cultivated it, that in the long run it would be productive and that you could live a very nice lifestyle, being a good steward of the land. And so we've always farmed cotton, still do. We've introduced soybeans and corn. We've had beef cattle in the past, and we've also had some pine timber land that is contiguous to our row crop land.
Okay, so go back to Haynesville. So you were saying you had never had any.
Well, one of the reasons that the Haynesville Shale has been such a blessing to our family is that we kept all the land, and all of our land is contiguous. So when Petrohawk came to us to lease it for the Haynesville Shale formation, they could lease up about 4,500 acres with one negotiation. I venture to say that it probably took them just as much time to negotiate with somebody that had 10 acres as it took us. So that was to our advantage in the negotiations, and we thought we signed a lease that was favorable to us over the long term.
Do you remember the first time hearing that this may occur, or that there was not only interest in leasing your land, but that it may be at a almost unthinkable value?
Yes, I remember when the Petrohawk people came to talk to us about leasing our land. My father and my brothers and me were sitting around the table, and we never asked for a certain lease price. They approached us with a lease price, and I think we kept our poker faces on, I'm not sure, but we're kicking each other in the shins under the table because we couldn't believe that they would. We had been leasing land for years and years and years, but never at the level that they offered.
And had you heard, do you remember, I know we're 17 years removed now, or 17 years removed now, but do you remember hearing kind of rumblings or gossip that this is about to start, or some of your colleagues are getting similar inquiries or having similar meetings, or was there any kind of discussions happening?
I would describe it more as an undercurrent of conversation among fellow landowners. Everybody was approached at about the same time. And, people executed leases with the different mineral companies, oil and gas exploration companies, at different figures. And I really don't know what the amounts that other people got. I mean, everyone kept that close to the vest, I think.
And today, are they drilling today on your land? I know they have drilled some over the last 17 years. Is that accurate?
Well, the flurry of activity was fast and furious to begin with, because I think we had 7 or 8 sections of land, and if a mineral oil gas exploration company drills a well, be it for oil or gas, in a particular section, and it's a producing well, then that section is HBP, held by production, and they don't have to execute another lease with you after the initial 3-year term. They can hold it by production. But that's good for the exploration company and for the landowner as well, because they're producing a commodity, and you want them to continue to drill. I really don't have a count on how many wells have been drilled in our place over the years, but we were just approached this week by a company that wants to drill some more wells, and so we opened the door to them and had a nice discussion with them.
And do you want to share, you said something to me too over the phone about one of your family members' responses when some of this was occurring. Do you want to share any of that? Or?
Sure. When I got home and told my wife, Ivy, the terms that the Petrohawk had proposed for leasing our land, and that my dad and my brothers and I were inclined to sign the lease, and we kind of discussed what that would mean for our family, her response was unforgettable for me. She didn't say something like, well, great, we can go buy a new car, or can I get a mink coat, or anything like that. She said, we're going to be able to do a lot of good for a lot of people, aren't we? And I thought, man, did I marry the right girl.
It's amazing. I love that.
I'll still get emotional over that.
Yeah, it's amazing. All right, I'm going to shift gears on you again. So you were an integral part of Centenary deciding to bring football back to the university. Take me take me behind the scenes. We've had President Holloman on the sofa. We've had Ross Barrett on the sofa. We've had John Atkins on the sofa, but we haven't had anyone really tell this story. So take me behind the scenes of some of that process and decision.
Jeffrey, it all goes back to the genesis of our current capital campaign, and we're probably into the 5th or 6th year of the campaign, with another 3 or 4 years to go before we reach all our goals, and I think we will reach them all. The two main emphases in that capital campaign, well, there were 4. More scholarships for students, more professorships for professors, and then there was sort of a catch-all category. But the 2 pillars outside of scholarships and professorships were to improve our science facility, Mickle Hall. 94% of Centenary students that apply to med school get into med school. We think that figure might lead the nation among undergraduate schools. So you play to your strengths. And so we're going to spend a good bit of money bringing Mickle Hall into the 21st century. It's still somewhere back in the 20th century, and maybe mid-20th century. And then the other aspect of the capital campaign, by the way, let me back up. Most of the aspects of the capital campaign were designed to drive up enrollment. A couple of years ago, Centenary, with facilities and faculty for about 1,000 students, had dropped to about 550 students. It's up over 700 now, and it continues to grow. Each incoming class is larger than the one before, and we have more applications each year. And we think the 2 main reasons why are because of Mickle Hall and the reintroduction of football after about an 80-year absence. I think the last year Centenary played football year before last was in 1946 or something like that, right after World War II. And those 2 main initiatives have had the desired effect. We have more students coming in and enrolling in the sciences, pre-med, and then we have a football team of, I think, around 100 players. So the other thing that football has done, it has created a dynamic on the campus that Centenary hadn't had in a long time, I understand. And it's a rallying...
A pride.
Yes, it's a rallying point for the student body to have something they can get excited about. And I think we did it to drive up enrollment, and it has done that. But a side benefit that I don't think everybody foresaw clearly, I know I didn't, was that it's enhanced student life so much. You have football players come, and they have buddies who come, and they have girlfriends who come. So it's not just the numbers that have increased are not just the team.
Do you remember kind of like the Haynesville discussions? Do you remember any of those early moments when this whole idea took shape, or someone said, I think a solution to some of our challenges is we need to bring football back, or at least look?
I don't remember who put it on the table to begin with. It was when we were having discussions to formulate how we wanted to structure the capital campaign. It could have been a board member, but it also could have been one of our consultants. I just don't remember. I do remember, and this sounds funny coming from someone who played football collegiately at the D3 level, which was a big part of my college career.
What position?
Offensive guard.
Okay.
At 175 pounds.
Wow.
Anyway.
Unthinkable today.
Yeah. I was, well, not at D3, but you know what? Probably unthinkable these days. But I was actually a skeptic at the beginning, even given my background.
I'm sure many were.
Well,
right?
I'll tell you why. The cost to reintroduce football was between $4 and $5 million. That was a huge bet. And it was a bet. I thought, we didn't know whether it was going to work or not, but it's worked great. And it turns out that it was a good bet, and I'm almost ashamed that I was skeptical to begin with. But I have to admit that I really was. I think we were all skeptical, but when the board voted to make that a part of the capital campaign, it was a unanimous vote.
That's
So
amazing.
we finally agreed on something that worked out altogether.
Well, I applaud those efforts and everything you guys are doing, because it's such an integral part of our community, and to see it trending in the right direction after a number of years where it was having significant challenges is due to people like you who've really stepped up and contributed a lot of their wisdom, but a lot of their time and support as well.
Well, I think Shreveport is beginning to realize what it's got. Jeffrey, I bet you there are dozens and dozens of cities the size of Shreveport, a little larger, a little smaller, that would give their eye teeth to have a small liberal arts college in their community. It's such a huge asset.
And a medical school and an Air Force base.
No kidding. No kidding. We got a lot going on, and which people need to jump in there and take part. By the way, I'll make another plug for football. It is a great atmosphere early on Saturday evenings. At Centenary's little field on the campus, it's a great family atmosphere, and you see young families with young children coming, and that's very gratifying to see that.
I love that, and I have very fond memories as a kid going to Centenary basketball games, going to captain's games. So I know what that feels like, having that as a kid here.
Oh.
All right, so we're gonna stay with football, but we're gonna shift away from Centenary. So, the Independence Bowl. The Independence Bowl has a special place for you and your family. Talk to me some about that, and then if you don't brag, I'll brag on you about a claim you can make.
Well. In 1976, when a group of city fathers, and I wish I could tell you who they are, but I just can't remember who the ones that were most involved were discussing what Shreveport could do to help the nation commemorate the bicentennial in 1976. And they came up with the idea, why don't we have a college bowl game in Shreveport? We got a stadium. It's never been used on New Year's Day, so far as any of us knew, and so that momentum began to build. I don't know all the nuts and bolts about it, but in 1976, the first game was held, and this year will be the 49th game. The Independence Bowl, by the way, is the 11th oldest bowl game in the country. And I don't know how many bowls there are now, 35 or 40 maybe? Something like that. I don't think many people know that. Next year, it'll celebrate its 50th anniversary. And I know what you're trying to bait me to say. I've been to every one of them, and I intend to continue to go to them as long as I'm able. And I'm looking forward to this year's game, and then the 50th game, particularly next year.
So I'm going to repeat that just in case anyone missed it. Archer's been to every single Independence Bowl game that we've had starting in 1976.
That's right. I'm a huge college football fan, particularly of LSU, but college football in general. And I thought to myself, this is something I can get around. I can get behind. I was probably 25 or 6 years old at the time. I was 25 years old in 1976. And I thought, I can get behind this. This is my hometown, wants to have a bowl game. Perfect for me. And so early on in the years, I volunteered on the committee for several years. And usually it's a younger group coming in, and the older guys phase out. But anyway, as far as I know, it's still healthy and going strong.
I love that. And I don't think there are many people. You're the first person I know of who can say they've been to every single games. I think that's amazing.
Oh, well, there are bound to be others.
I'm sure there are, but there aren't many. And
probably not.
I think that's fantastic. All right, so we're gonna talk first Presbyterian Church, or First Pres, as certain people know it. So First Presbyterian Church in Austin, Presbyterian Theological Seminary also have very special places for you and your family. tell me some about that if you could.
Okay. Well, I'm fully expect and certainly hope that I'll be a cradle-to-grave member of First Presbyterian Church, and I don't see any reason why not. I grew up in that church along with my 3 younger brothers, and we were regular attendees. This will tickle you, I think. Early on, my parents would take us to LSU games Saturday night, 8 o'clock in Tiger Stadium, and we'd go via the train. And we'd catch a Pullman on the way back. And so I don't know how my parents slept together in the bunk. They were so narrow, about like this couch. And my younger brother John and I would sleep in the top bunk. We'd get back into Shreveport on the train at about 6 a.m. Well, guess what we would do? We'd go home, eat breakfast, get cleaned up, put on our Sunday clothes, and go to Sunday school and church. Even going to an LSU game and getting back at 6 a.m.
Wow.
didn't keep us from going to church. So you kind of see how things worked at our household. And I've always been appreciative of the church and the opportunity to worship and serve there. So I early on got active. Didn't have a choice as long as Mom and Daddy were running the show, but stayed active as a young adult. And my father had served on the board of Austin Presbyterian Theological Seminary down in Austin, Texas. And he served on the board for 20 some odd years, I think. He's chairman of the board. And so I think about 15 years or so ago, I was asked to serve on the board and was happy to do it. Ended up serving as the chair for about 5 years and served about a 10-year term and then took a year or two off, and now I'm back on the board down there.
And how are those two entities connected? First Presbyterian Church and Austin Theological.
Well, First Presbyterian Church is sort of within the orbit of Austin Seminary because I think the nearest other Presbyterian seminary to Shreveport is probably over in Decatur, Georgia. And so the Austin Seminary considers First Presbyterian Church Shreveport, Louisiana, as part of its constituency. And our church for 40 or 50 years has been very supportive of the seminary. We've had board members, other than members of our family, serve. And our congregation, both as a church entity and both as individual church members, have been very generous to the seminary. And we frequently have professors come up here and preach or have a lecture series, and the connection is still going strong.
Love it. Well, Archer, those are my set questions for you today. As I told you before we started, we're just grazing the surface. You're such an important person in this community. I feel so grateful and fortunate to have you here today to share a small amount of your stories and wisdom with us. Are there any other areas of the community or of your life or of the incredible Frierson legacy that you'd like to share today?
Well, I'm going to turn the tables on you a little bit. I served on the Y board for years and served as the chair of the board for a while as well. And
your son Archer was chairman of the board when I started working at the Y.
So our family has been involved for a good while and continues to be involved. We're members and continue to be members. I have to confess, I don't get up there and exercise as much as I should, but who does? Except Archer III. But the Y is just an integral part of our community. And I think about men my father's age who, were he still living, would be 100 years old this year, leaving their jobs at noon downtown and going and exercising at the Y, either at noon or after work, maybe some of them before work. And then growing up, we didn't have Cabosa, Spar, and so forth. So as a child, I played baseball and football and basketball at the Y, or on Y teams, put it that way, different locations. And for our family, and now, and I coached our children, and now I'm going to grandchildren's games, and this is the best part that the Y has ever played in my life, sitting up in the stands, having no responsibilities, and watching my grandchildren play ball. It's just great. I love it.
Tell the audience, because you told me before we started how many grandchildren you have.
16.
And how many in the Shreveport-Bossier area?
12 of the 16 live in Shreveport, and 4 live in Fort Worth, which is only 3 hours door to door. So, when you have 5 children, it doesn't take very long to get to 16 grandchildren. And since I've retired from my second career in real estate a number of years ago, people say, well, now what are you doing when you retire? And I tell them the truth. I go to lots of birthday parties.
You do. Absolutely.
I do.
Well, the Y appreciates the Frierson family very much. Shreveport-Bossier appreciates the Frierson family very much. And Gale, Louisiana appreciates the Frierson family very much. Is there anything else, Arthur?
No, not that comes to mind, but thank you for having me. I really have enjoyed this. We talked about some things, and your questions spurred some thoughts in my mind that I hadn't thought about in a long time. So I appreciate it. I feel like I've been blessed with a very happy life, and I need to think about that more often probably.
We all do.
Yeah.
I will say one other thing before I lose you. So you will notice a little insignia on his pocket. That's for Washington Lee University. And he took his coat off before we started, but it also had a Washington Lee insignia on it. So that's a very important part of your life as well. And like I said, we just grazed the surface today. We could have covered so many other things. You've done so much, and we all appreciate you.
Well, thank you for bringing up W&L. I love it, and we have reunions, class reunions, every 5 years, and I've never missed one. This past year, I went to my 50th, which is my 10th reunion. I don't intend to miss any as long as I'm able.
Well, I love that, and that's clear through your dedication for the community, through your dedication to the Independence Bowl, and thanks so much, Archer.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed it.
Me too.
Really did.
Thank you.